From the Show Me Institute, Director of Government Accountability. Good morning, Patrick.
Good morning.
Now, we're going to talk about gas tax here in a second, but did you find, I filled up yesterday, and I noticed that gas prices are significantly down. I find that interesting that it always seems like a week out from an election, gas prices always seem to dip. Did you ever notice that?
Well, that may just be happenstance. I remember back in 2008 that gas prices were pretty high all the way up to the election. It may have impacted that election a little bit. But, yeah, it's fun to watch that, but I think it's mostly supply and demand that you're seeing, and not just U.S. supply and demand, but international supply and demand.
Yeah, okay. All right, fair enough. Now, the gas tax, we're all going to go to the polls and vote on whether or not we want to increase our gas tax to pay for the roads. What is it, 0.025% for the next 5 years or next 4 years, right?
It's going to be rising, I think, 10 cents, something like that, over the course of until 2022.
Right.
Yeah, and what you're going to end up seeing is, I think, a little bit more funding that will actually go to the roadways. The way that this particular ballot item structured is that the money is mostly earmarked for the highway patrol, but as I understand it, and as the ballot language seems to suggest, that will free up money for roadways that are currently, the current tax is paying for the highway patrol from what it already has. So this would set aside money for the highway patrol, would free up money that the state could use for the roads themselves. We've talked about this for a long time on your program in particular, about the importance of ensuring that our infrastructure is fully operational, that it is looking forward, and that our roads are safe and good. And particularly to fund it through something that looks kind of like a user fee. Gas taxes roughly approximate that. Typically when you're talking about user fees, you're talking about toll roads. We really don't see that here in the state of Missouri, but here in Missouri, we have been funding our roadways basically with $1996, which I think is the last time that we actually increased the gas tax here in the state. We're funding 2018 needs with $1996, and that's setting aside the fact that cars are getting more efficient and more, are able to go farther on the same tank of gas. So you're not getting nearly as much bang for your buck, for each tax dollar that comes in. I would certainly prefer to have seen a reduction in spending someplace else. You don't like seeing taxes go up in one area, and the government just kind of get bigger and bigger and bigger. But this is an area, infrastructure, where government does have an appropriate role, and I think that it probably is overdue that we set aside more money for them.
Now, going back to the Missouri Highway Patrol, the Missouri Highway Patrol is funded through gas tax. So people are like, so this is a gas tax, but so Highway Patrol, from what I understand, automatically gets tax money from gas tax because that's how we fund the Missouri Highway Patrol.
Yeah, in my understanding, the reasons they approached this particular ballot item in this way is that I think supporters thought it would be easier to make an argument for public safety in the Highway Patrol than to make an argument about roadways, because we've seen ballot items in the past which have been to increase funding for roads through a sales tax, which we're not inclined to support, I think, at the Institute, simply because it doesn't focus the cost on the folks who actually use it, like a user fee, like a gas tax.
Right.
And so folks who constructed this particular proposition thought it would be better to have the focus be on the Highway Patrol itself. Now, I'll leave it to them to make those kind of political decisions, but I think I would much rather have preferred to have kind of an up or down vote on good policy, and a good policy is a gas tax that reflects, Missouri's priorities and focuses that money on roadways themselves. This does it kind of in a roundabout way, but it probably is still, a worthwhile thing to consider as we look forward to the future of our roadways here in the state.
Patrick, what do you think of the argument that a lot of outside the state of Missouri, truckers, people traveling through, right? We've got all these major interstates, people from all over this country, when they come through, they're going to buy gas. And so they're going to pay for the roads they use. And so some of this money is going to be coming from out of state, which doesn't necessarily, right? So why we don't have to pay it. Out-of-state people are paying a portion of it. What do you think of that side of this?
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I'm not inclined to support things like, hotel taxes, for instance, or tourism taxes, because, we think that other people will pay for our things. That's not really a great policy in general. But the idea that, people who are from out of town are using our roadways and should probably pay a portion of the cost, I think that's fair. And I think that the gas tax captures, particularly for those who are driving across the state. Now, of course, you can get across the state on a tank of gas, and if you're starting in Illinois and you end up in Kansas, you may not stop for gas, but probably it's still pretty good that you may have to stop someplace. And if you do stop someplace for gas here in the state, you're going to end up paying the gas tax. That helps maintain the roads so you can keep using them in the future, whether or not you're a Missouri resident. In terms of the gas tax, that part's irrelevant, and I think you're right. It does capture folks who are traveling through the state. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. What do you think of? Well, I'll tell you what. You've mentioned tolls. I've really come around on tolls. I think tolls, the way it's run now, you drive through Illinois, they've got tolls. Chicago has tolls. Florida has tolls. It's not the olden days where you had to sit and wait in the long toll lines and wait for the guy to give you change for a nickel. Tolls with the fast pass and all that, it's a great way to pay for roads.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I've got a toll sticker in my car so that if I'm driving through Kansas or Oklahoma and I hit one of those turnpikes, you don't really have to stop, and they end up charging your debit card or credit card or whatever you've given them. And I think they may charge you once a month or something like that, but it really is kind of a no-nonsense, no-problem kind of undertaking. And so, do you want to pay for something that you don't think that you're paying for it directly? Probably not. I get that, but you're still paying for it through gas taxes. You're paying for it in other ways, and particularly if you're not going to be using those turnpikes or if you're not going to be using those toll roads, you probably want the folks who are going to use those toll roads to pay for them rather than you have to pay for it through some other tax instead.
Yeah. Also, all those electric cars that are on the road too, right? They're not paying the gas tax.
No, but I think this proposition actually imposes some costs on alternative fuels as well. It could apply a similar kind of tax on those. But you're exactly right. Over time, we're going to have to figure out a way to actually fund these needs. And as gas-powered cars become, I guess, less frequent or less kind of the focus of our transportation system, we'll have to look into the future and see exactly how best to fund our roads. Maybe tolling will become more popular, but I think the question before us is mostly about gas taxes and alternative fuels, and the proposition that you're going to see on the ballot is going to deal with that a little bit. Yeah,
it's a great point. We might be driving as much as we've ever been, but with much more fuel-efficient cars. So you're not buying as much gas, meaning the tax has gone down really in real dollars, thanks to the more fuel-efficient cars.
Yeah, you're exactly, and that's kind of the problem that we were looking at from the last time that we even increased the gas tax. 17 cents in 1996 looks a little bit different than 17 cents a gallon in 2018, particularly if you're able to make 30 miles per gallon rather than 20 miles per gallon. Yeah. I think over time we're going to have to make different policy adjustments on where the tax is going to apply. I think maybe tolling becomes a little bit more popular, but in the meantime we have needs that need to be met today, and people still use gas-powered cars, and so a tax that applies to those cars and looks like a user fee is something that probably ought to be considered.
Patrick Ishmael, Director of Government Accountability at the Show Me Institute in Kansas City, as well as St. Louis. Patrick, thanks for checking in.
Thank you.
8:45.